and a keen knitter. Oh, and I forgot to mention, she's a special place in the heart of our nation as the country's most celebrated, tea-obsessed housekeeper, Mrs. Doyle from Father Ted. So we're thrilled to have a celebrated guest with us today. Give a big welcome to Pauline McLynn. Hiya, Pauline.
Hello, how are you? I need to kick off by saying we have a new verse to that song.
Yeah.
So you say tomato, I say tomato, you say boron, I say baron.
Absolutely.
Let's call the whole thing off. Yeah. Yeah, fabulous. Great to be here.
Thanks very much for joining us. It's great to have you here. You've already sensed the buzz that's in the room. There's lots of amazing people in here, amazing groups, amazing educators that have done fantastic things, and we're delighted you're going to present the rewards to them as we move on. But we've heard about many of the strings that you have to your bow: acting, writing, knitting, making tea. Would you consider yourself a lifelong learner?
Oh God, yeah. When it comes to all the different things that I seem to have done, when you're living from hand to mouth, it's best to be ambidextrous. That's all I'll say on that. Yes, it's kind of the big thing, isn't it? I do feel that it's the important bit about every day is that you learn something new. We got a skill today, thanks to Robbie, who's a great teacher and an inspiration. Every day is a learning day. I think sometimes people get a little bit afraid of the word education. It sounds too big, doesn't it, somehow? Whereas we realise when we sit down and break it down that every day we're learning something. And the day that you don't learn a little something is the day that you really have to, take yourself aside and say, what was the purpose of this day? What did I do today that in any way made a difference even to my own life? And I think, learning, we live in such a busy world that changes with every day, that, we're absorbing an awful lot. And I think that we learn more than we think every day. And I think that probably the main thing that we can, leave the house with every day or stay in the house with, those are lovely days as well. It's just curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be curious about stuff. I think that drives us forward and hopefully makes us better at, deciding how we'll deal with situations even. Just tiny things every day.
Yeah. And in this room, people have taken lots of different journeys. Not everybody was, leaving cert, college, university, whatever. What was your own educational journey like?
Well, mine was quite traditional, I suppose, in some ways. So I was born in 1962. Don't do the mathematics, which I failed in my leaving, by the way. But I had a very good honour in Latin and got into Trinity College as a result. They were regarded as one and the same thing. And to be honest with you, there are calculators in the world, whereas Latin, very handy. But I had a very traditional sort of schooling, as it was. Because I was a child of the 60s, there kind of really wasn't much choice. You went, the clergy were in charge of primary and secondary education, and for me that was the Mercy Convent in Galway, both primary and secondary school. And I liked school. So, that was handy as well, because my brothers didn't really pay much attention at school and now complain that they never got to go to college. Well, they really didn't put the work in, as it turns out, because they weren't that interested in those subjects. And I do think that maybe, if we had grown up at a different time, they would have been more going to the tech and learning, skills. Like one of them now works in computers. I literally don't know what he does. I think he writes code or something. It's just like a foreign language. Yeah. I don't know where he got that from. And the other is just the most wonderful man who delivers oil around the road, cooking oil around Galway. So it's, and that too is a skill. He's a very friendly person and great company. It was very traditional in that way, and because I have no practical skills and still don't, can I just say, the next step onwards was I tried to go to college, and and I did an arts degree in Trinity, and I was the first woman in the family to go to college, um, but not because anyone was, in any way thick in the family. They're all a lot smarter than I am, and hopefully when I become an adult, I'll have improved on that, because that's not happening too quickly either. But they were smart people, but you left school at 16 and you got a job because you had to make ends meet. So I had the privilege of going to Trinity. I studied history of art and modern English, and left with an arts degree, a middling arts degree that was of no use to anyone and still isn't. But that wasn't the point of it. And I think the best thing that I ever did when I got to Trinity, which was still very much regarded as a Protestant university as well, it was like I had teachers in Galway who had to ask permission from the bishop to go to a Protestant university. And one of them, my history teacher, Mr. Cuff, Kieran Cuff, who became the headmaster eventually of the secondary school, he was refused permission, and all he wanted to do was study history at Trinity College, and he was told no by the priest, by the bishop. So we lived in different times. So I got to go to Trinity and had an all-round fabulous education, even if I didn't pay enough attention to the subjects I was doing. And I graduated just about in 1983 into one of the biggest recessions we'd ever had in the country, with a degree that didn't really entitle you to any job. But the best thing I had done was in Freshers' Week, 4 years earlier, I'd gone to all of the introductory lectures, and all of the lecturers made a point, which I think is worth remembering. They said, please don't expect that you're going to get a job out of whatever it is you're studying here. That's not, you enjoy these 4 years just for the sheer learning of it all. And I learned lots of things that were nothing to do with my courses. And I'm very grateful for that too. And left 4 years later, not expecting a job because there wasn't one to be had. And it was, honestly, I can't recommend enough that people should do it. I also think I was too young. I had a very different experience too. If I went back now, I would just get so many different things out of, say, a college experience. And also, spurred on by this day to day, there are loads of things that I'd love to learn. I'm kind of hoping I get sent to an open prison, possibly for not paying my VAT or something, so that I could do a horticulture course. I'd love to be able to grow more in my garden, and I think it would be a gentle enough crime that would allow me to be there. So, what I'm saying is, like, there's opportunity everywhere, and we must grab it.
And you'll get your education free.
And I'd be giving a little back to society, I feel. And I'd be very, very sorry for not paying my VAT.
And at what stage through your university, I know you were in the Drama Society, when did you get the bug for acting, and when did you make that bold decision to see acting as a potential career?
Well, in many ways it was made for me, because going into a recession with no practical skills, I had been knocking about the Drama Society in Trinity with a whole load of other types. And during the summers, we would put on lunchtime shows, usually a bit of Yeats or something for the tourists, basically. And we'd give them soup and bread and cheese. If they ate all of that, we didn't eat for the day. It was, these were the times. And so, I kind of fell into acting because why not? There was no other job to be had. But I think it does go back to, all my family, both sides are from Sligo, even though I grew up in Galway. And in Sligo, all of my relations probably are still there. I walk along the streets of Sligo, I'll be there tomorrow, and people will say, I'm your cousin. And I'm sure you are. And that's great, but we must never have children. Is the only thing really, I guess. there were a lot. My mother said I was just the first person to get paid. That's a loose term for showing off, because I think there were a lot of entertainers in both sides of the family, good singers, storytellers, the whole lot. But you just couldn't. It was very unusual to run away with the circus back in those days. It couldn't be done. You had to go out and get a job and help support the family.
Yeah.
So I just fell into it by accident, and I'm not trained. So that's another. Some would say that's a course I should take now. Is a little bit of acting training. But I suppose I've kind of always had to learn on the hoof when it comes to that, and it's kind of the school of hard knocks, learning by making mistakes, and I think as well, even though having eventually enjoyed history of art and modern English, by the way, very much history of art more than the modern English, I found English hard because just like acting, I hate taking a thing apart. Like you have a beautiful clock, you take it apart, you put it back together again, but there's a bit left over and yet it's still working. And I just think, that kind of breaks the magic. So I've never been very good at analysing beautiful things, really. History of art was kind of different. You could be more practical about it. But when it comes to words, which as we know are dangerous things, it can be hard to explain those things. So what any of the skills that so-called skills that I've acquired have just been learning the hard way, I guess, which is in itself a process, I think.
Isn't it hard to believe it's 33 years since Father Ted hit our screens?
Yes. Thank you for making me feel old now.
We're all feeling old with you.
Oh my God! Maybe not adult, but old in my own case. Yes, it is very hard to believe it's 33 years. I don't know. I have a very poor handle on time. I think it's because as an actor, let's say that's my main job or not, depending on how things are going during a year. Actors just measure the year in the job. So if I was doing a theatre show, we'd rehearse for 4 weeks, probably do a 4-week run, perhaps even an 8-week run. So that's 3 months gone. So if I had 2 jobs during the year, that would be 6 months gone. But in the meantime, the time flies between hand. So a year doesn't mean a year to me. So when you say 33 years, kind of can't believe it.
It's the most amazing show, the way it brought people together. Like I remember in Belfast, it was on Channel 4 on a Friday night, something like 8 o'clock or 8:30. And our son would have been maybe 4-year-old at that time. And my father was in his 80s with dementia. And we'd go down to visit him. And Father Ted, you'd see the 4-year-old and the 8-year-old together, laughing their legs off.
That's right.
What made it so special?
Well, I have to say the writing was immaculate, and you could really not go wrong with it. So that was one thing. But I think as well, it's not dependent. Like a whole lot of other sitcoms were kind of dependent on when they were made. If that there might be current events happening Father Ted just exists in its own world and its own time, on a strange little island that has no west side. Figure that. But I think that possibly why it appeals to everyone is that it's incredibly well written, certainly, but it's very, very silly as well. I mean, there's no agenda to it except fun, laughter. It's when you look back on it, and people say, "Well, of course, maybe it was having a go at the clergy." No, it was just a way of putting 3 men and a woman into one place. They could have been firefighters. It wouldn't have been as funny. But, it was like, and the uniform isn't as good as a firefighter's, I will say that. But it was just a way of putting, a lot of strange people together in one place. And it appeals to everyone. I think, when kids, like a 4-year-old watches it, I think 20 years later, they'll still be laughing at it when they come back to it. So it's bigger now than it ever was when we started it, for sure.
This will be a difficult question.
Oh.
Do you have a favourite episode?
Oh, now can I just say as well, I make shitty tea. I like it, but and I'm not great at sandwiches either. So, but neither was Mrs. Doyle actually. I feel, if I'm asked, I really always lean towards the milkman episode, and I can't believe some of the things that were said. Like the Pat Mustard, who indeed was a friend of mine in real life, whatever that is, him saying, right, I'm off to ride Mrs. O'Reilly now. You know what? We were allowed to say that. And also, I love things like one of the hairy babies is in fact Ardal O'Hanlon's eldest daughter. She's now a doctor. Yeah. And, yeah, they brought her into the studio and little sideburns. She's not, she was freshly made and everything. And little sideburns were glued onto her face. I think she'd be taken away now by social services if we attempted to do such a thing now. Yeah. So I'm sure she's very, very proud of that. A very fine performance as well from her.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Pauline, you've had a very successful run at writing as well. Was that something you always did, or did you come to that later in your career?
Absolutely not. And also, that's something I'm sure people who've read my books would say, she could have done with a writing course. I don't know. I just, how it happened was, again, a happy accident, and we must embrace them whenever they happen to us. It was just an opportunity. A load of the comedians, everybody thinks I do stand-up comedy. I don't. But I've hung around so often with comedians who are also doing acting that I think people don't realise that I do. I had a man say to me once, I saw your gig in Kilkenny last year. I really enjoyed it. And I went, really? What material did I do? Because it wasn't me. He was mixing. He'd enjoyed it, so he's mixing me up with someone funny. So that's great. But yes, again, it was a happy accident. There were some Irish publishers. Oh, remind me to tell you something about evening classes in a minute. Irish publishers, an Irish publisher, it was O'Brien Press, were just going to all of the comedians and saying, do you want to write a novel? Do you want to write a book? Do you want to do? And, for want of looking for a woman as well, because there weren't that many female stand-ups at the time, or comics, I believe they call themselves now. They said, Pauline, would you like to write a book now? And think about it. And I passed by it here. I used to pass a place on a bus on the North Circular. I still do from time to time, called Leo Street. And I thought, I love detective books. So I thought, do you know what? I'll try to write a detective book about an Irish private detective called Leo Street. It went from there. And again, it's just, I just tried to write the sort of book that I'd like to read. And they went from, through all kinds of styles. There were 3 Leo Streets, and then what the Americans call standalone novels. And then the hardest thing I ever did was I wrote 2 books for tweenies. If we like 10 to 13-year-olds, I didn't want to go past 13 because then you're into sex and drugs. And the last thing I need is a parent coming up to me and saying, my daughter tried something because she read about it in one of your books. I don't, oh no, we'll just leave her. A little girl with a crush on an older guy. He's 2 years older than her, and that's it. There isn't even kissing in it. I can hardly deal with that myself as a so-called adult. So they also it was a case of trying to remember a little bit, of the learning and make it work for me, when it came to book writing. And again, it's when you live from hand to mouth, get both hands out, even if one of them is using a crayon to write a novel, that's good too. You're making a mark. And I'm back to a bit of writing now, which is really interesting because I kind of ran out of stories to tell. And suddenly then in the last while, 2 have occurred to me, and so I'll be going back now to sit at a desk and make myself write 1,000 words a day. Yeah. So
you asked me to remind you about evening classes.
Yes. Okay. So on the publishing thing, I have a history with publishing anyway, and with adult learning. Wolfhound Press, who no longer exist, simply Wolfhound Press, fabulous imprint. Seamus Cashman, who writes a bit of poetry as well. He just retired, and so that's the only reason it stopped. It's not because I used to work there. In my summer months when I was at college, he used to publish a bestseller called A Guide to Evening Classes and Leisure Activities in Ireland. And I researched and compiled it for 3 years. Yeah. So, so adult learning is still, it was very, very at the heart of everything. So it was just wonderful. All kinds of courses. So it's just wonderful.
That's terrific. We have our final question, and then we'll move on to the awards. In the room today, we've got lots of learners who've come different paths. Some have faced many challenges, bumps on the road, and you've talked to us about a creative career, which isn't a straight line.
No.
Is there any advice you would give to people who maybe have a wee knockback, how to get back moving again?
Yeah, I'm not a great believer in, adversity makes you stronger and the whole lot. I think there are better ways of getting the best out of people, encouragement being one of them. So we must encourage our legislators to remember that, and all of the departments. However, I will say this. One of the things that, say, university in particular did for me is I didn't realise till many years later that it had taught me a kind of way of making sense of things, a critical thinking, if you will. Now, at the time, I was fairly rubbish at all that. And there are many excuses for it, but literally, I think stuff was happening to me that I didn't even know until later on. I mean, all right, I have a degree in history of art and modern English, majored in history of art. But what it has led to is I will walk into a room and think, I have something I can talk to people about anyway. I can make conversation at least with people and, move forward. I would say that when you come against the bumps in the road, and Lord knows I've had many, one of the great things about learning and learning every day, however we're doing it, is that what you can do is think to yourself, okay, how am I going to either move around this or through it, and just use it for my own purposes? And I think that that's something that, you should have so much confidence in your ability to do that, even though it may look like you've come up against a brick wall. No, it's just there's some little lay-by through which you're going to go around, and the gentle art of spin, even for yourself, to just say, no, if I've hit this wall, it means I'm ready to hit this wall. Yeah. I'll find a way around it. And I suppose, and this is why today is such a great day, I think, because we can all feel the joy in the room and the hope. We must always have hope that we can go forward. And I think as an adult learner, and I'm still, well, maybe not adult, but I'm not grown up, but a learner. I mean, I think, it offers an opportunity for you to put into play all of the things that you want, including wanting to get past this wall, but also just saying to yourself, I'm here. I can do this, and to hope that you can, and to know that you can, because every day, even just making the choice that you want to learn something, that in itself is your secret weapon.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely don't be put off by it. It's more to do with whoever is putting the block in your way. That's their problem. You'll find a way forward. Yeah.